Our next speaker is, we're going to change continents though, and our next speaker is going to take us all the way to Africa. He hails from Lagos in London. Michael Ugwu, and he's going to talk about how NFTs can unlock the next level of creativity on the African continent. And it was great meeting him backstage, and you guys are in for a treat. So come on out, Michael.
Thank you for that. Thank you. How's everyone doing? Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Michael. I run a community called Metaphrase, and I actually started this community off the back of last year's NFT.NYC. I felt that I didn't see enough, great African representation. I got to meet some people last year, but I felt that, there's a lot going on in Web3, and I need to do my part to kind of translate, educate, and help grow participation, especially on the continent. I guess there's a couple of reasons why, which I'll get to. But these are some pieces I own from some amazing African artists. The first one on the left was actually part of a super rare partnership with a gallery in Lagos called ArtX. Lagos, it's a bi-yearly event. The one in the middle was by a chap called Osinachi, who actually started minting work on the Ethereum blockchain around the same time as Xcopy, Hackatao, Coldy, and some other OGs in the space. That was part of the Christie's collection. I managed to pick that up. He was the first African artist to showcase at Christie's. And The Red Mine by Anthony Ezekiel. So just to show you some of the amazing pieces some of our local African artists have created over the last couple of years. So prior to actually really getting into the space, I was a collector. So, I'm part of a couple of interesting communities like the CryptoPunks, the Bored Apes, obviously Mutant Apes, the Doodles, even the Smalls. This is some pieces from my collection. And I felt that, this is like a global opportunity. I was able to acquire the vast majority of my NFTs from my office in Lagos. And I felt that whilst I was acquiring these digital assets, a lot of people on the continent were kind of like missing the boat. I know we say we're early, but by the time, a lot of people started to develop some interest in NFTs, some of these pieces were far out of the reach of, regular guys, especially on the continent like Africa. So I felt that, look, I can't just be part of these communities by myself. I need to have more people part of these communities, and we need to build our own communities as well. Safe to say, like I said, I formed this community last year, Metaphrase. We have about 800 people in the community now. We've actually bidded and bought, various NFTs, sharing the costs. Similar structure to I guess it's a loose structure around a DAO. So like Other Side Land, Akutas, NFT Worlds, and interesting projects that I think are going to be long-term projects, like blue chip projects that I believe will stand the test of time. I'm not really a degen. I do believe these are digital assets that I want to buy and hold for the long term. So yes, we have about 800 people right now. We had an amazing dope party yesterday at Scorpio's NYC. Had about 500-600 people come through. We were trying to bring Afrobeats to NFT.NYC. And that's the first year. Next year is going to be even bigger. It's a shame it was yesterday, otherwise I would have thrown out the invite here. But yeah, definitely more on that a bit later. So this is the continent of Africa. Sorry, the map's a bit dark. But in the center, you can see Africa. It's a big continent, right? Now, it's dark shaded because this represents electricity. We're obviously way behind in terms of infrastructure. There's a lot of archaic infrastructure. Now, to me, we have, 1 billion people across the continent. Just based on, the creativity we have on the continent, if you can actually measure creativity in light, I think that continent will be probably one of the brightest on that global map, right? And I think that, the blockchain presents some interesting opportunities to actually help leapfrog, when it comes to, like digital asset creation, ownership, valuing digital assets, and what have you. I think the blockchain has a massive opportunity. I'm out in London a lot. I was obviously brought up in London. I live between London and Lagos. I go to the US, I go to Dubai, and a lot of people, don't look at the specific utility around the blockchain that I think Africans have embraced. We don't have great banking systems out in Africa. It's hard to acquire assets. It's hard to get loans. It's hard to actually, keep things safe. There's hyperinflation. There's currency devaluation. The blockchain offers a lot of opportunity, around how we actually bridge the divide. And that's what I like to educate on. Now, if we look at history, if anyone knows Nigerian history, African history, we've actually had a lot of, our wealth, our creative wealth stolen over the years. This is a Bini bronze, or part of some Bini artifacts. Stolen in 1897, so a long time ago. Now there are calls for repatriation, from museums in London, museums in Germany, and I do believe that there have been some conversations around this, and there are some museums who are interested in repatriating some of these cultural artifacts back to Nigeria, back to the continent. But what we can see is a situation where we haven't been able to capitalize on our creative, our creative excerpts, right? Like something like this. A lot of governments are like, look, give us back our artifacts, let us monetize them, let us actually derive some value from them. And it's a complex process, I completely get that. But I think with NFTs, we can actually bypass that. I'm seeing a lot of artists today creating amazing content, creating amazing works, and selling them, right? Like actually paying for their lives, buying homes, paying their rent, moving their families out of like very bad areas in different parts of the continent. We're talking about in Nigeria where the average wage is about $98 per month, right? This was a work sold by a young chap that I've been mentoring called Anthony Ezekiel. He sold this on Super Rare. He's one of a few African artists who are actually on Super Rare for 5.5 ETH last year. And he's 21 years old, right? So you can imagine the kind of impact this kind of sale would have had on his life. Osinachi is definitely someone who has led the way when it comes to African artists on the continent. His works, they go from anything from $50,000 and up. And he also was a teacher in Nigeria. Again, NFTs have changed his life. And I'm seeing more and more young guys come into this space, create works, join communities, and actually build their lives just based on that connection that they have via NFTs. Traditionally, you would find that an artist would be in Lagos, Nigeria, or Nairobi in Kenya, or Johannesburg in South Africa, and it'll be really hard to get into the local art galleries. They'll end up selling their work on the streets. Oftentimes, they'll be exploited. You find that most of the value is extracted by the gallery owners if they decide to accept your work. Not that it's massively different from the global scene. However, even when the galleries do accept your work, there's a lot of opacity around the transaction. There's very poor revenue share rights. And obviously, there's nothing like royalties that you can derive from the blockchain. So I've seen a lot of lives change over the last year. I'm happy to have advised some artists, some projects, some protocols coming out of the continent who are actually bridging the divide. And yeah, that's Anthony. So, a couple of things I think that one should always talk about in this is, the opportunities provided are global reach and representation. I think there's much better representation using the blockchain, minting work on the blockchain. I think that now you've seen artists actually achieve global reach. Now, I've been in the music industry for a long time. I used to run Sony Music West Africa. So, I've been in the music industry. I've worked with a lot of creatives. I've signed a lot of amazing African superstars. And I think, streaming worked for musicians. I think looking at NFTs and what got me excited about them is that this actually works massively for visual artists. Though we know that NFTs is not just about visual arts, there's a lot of utility around how we actually, share value on the blockchain, transact, and what have you. But I think it's impacted the lives of visual artists in a very, very, very positive way. And if you look at governments, they don't have budgets to actually start, building out, a lot of creative industry infrastructure. The priorities for these government budgets are hospitals, roads, not museums. I think that, we're at the stage with the decentralization where it becomes less and less important to have these centralized, types of infrastructures being built when we have these decentralized opportunities. Access to global liquidity. I don't know if guys know any currencies across the continent, but, Nigeria, we use the Naira. In South Africa, it's the Rand. In Kenya, it's the Kenyan shilling. And regardless of the currency you're using across the continent, you find that there's limited access to liquidity. Guys are like, or people, people who can afford to buy stuff in general are focused on utility items, phone bills, light bills, car bills if they can afford a car, bus, transportation bills, and just surviving day to day. So buying art is not necessarily a top priority for the average African or the average Nigerian or the average, black person on the continent. So NFTs have actually provided access to global liquidity. We've seen a lot of collectors come in and, support the movement, buy work and continue to support artists. I've done a lot to obviously introduce a lot of artists to my Bored Apes community, the CryptoPunks community, and what have you. And I think last year, or even this year, a friend of mine, Crypto Novo, he spoke, and we've done a few projects together, and he's been really supportive of what's going on the continent. NFTs actually allow us to tell our own stories as well. We find that, oftentimes, our stories have been told for us. I think that, when we talk about ownership or digital asset ownership on the blockchain, it allows us to own our stories and actually derive and exploit value from these stories over the long term. I think that's an amazing value add. It empowers the next generation of creatives, super important. But lastly, and most importantly, our culture, thankfully is now some form of capital. And, I think a lot of the challenges that we face on the continent, people wouldn't really get it unless you go there, unless you're from there, unless you hear stories from there. It's not easy. Yes, there is a global elite of Africans. You probably see some of them in the NBA, some who are like massive musicians, either on the continent or Europe or even in America. But we have, 1 billion people, young people who are generally struggling. And I think that, with things like NFTs and, building communities around NFTs and what decentralization in general has to offer, I think that, our culture can now be looked at as capital. So yeah, that's me, that's us, that's Metaphrase. So, it was a brief one for me. So you can actually follow me on Twitter. I am MetaMike. Instagram, same name, I am MetaMike. Metaphrase on Twitter's meta_phrase. On our Instagram, we are Metaphrase. So, so if you have any kind of like support you want to give us, advice you want to give us, join the community, just be part and parcel of what we're trying to build, feel free to jump in. And thank you very much. I guess if there are any questions, feel free to ask. And that's about it.
Excellent. Any questions? We got time for one quick question. All right. Okay. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you interested in doing collabs with like music companies and folks in the United States?
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, I'm still in the music industry. I was with Sony for a long period of time. So definitely I see massive opportunities in music. I have worked on some projects already, collabing visual artists and music artists. But definitely I want cross-continental collabs, global collabs, anything, down for it. Oh wow, dope. Yeah, that's cool. That'll be dope. Yeah, dope stuff, man. Nice one. Just want to say big ups to my wife. She's here. Onyeka in the building. What's up? She came all the way to New York with me. So thank you, baby.
Excellent. Yeah, you can take that.
All right, cool. Thanks.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. Let's give it a hand for our presenter. Very inspiring.